All right, so like I was telling you, right? So it works off of stuff like this, right? Where it says storm. When you play when you play the spell, copy it for each spell played before this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies, right? So this one in particular, Grape Shot, right, deals 1 damage to target creature. So the entire objective of the deck is to play one of these, right? Because they both reduce the cost of spells. And then play these. So this reduces it by what's called colorless, right? This actually gives you these like mana symbols, right? Once you actually learn how to play, it'll make a lot more sense, right? But by using this, these spells that give you these colored mana symbols become a lot more profitable. So instead of having to pay 2 to get 3 for this one, I pay 1 and I get 3. And then on top, but because everything is reduced, that 3 goes even farther. So the idea is to get your lands out, play preferably this guy, because this guy's a lot better, but this is the one that can damage you, or this one which just helps reduce everything, right? Then you play these to get a bunch of fucking mana, and then you use these to dig through your deck, right? So these say exile, which means like basically remove from the game because there's not a lot of interaction with cards that have been quote unquote exiled, right? There's a term in Yu-Gi-Oh that I can't fucking remember, but you get the idea, right? I think it actually might be exile. I don't fucking know. Whatever. All right, so these will dig through your deck, right? Because they'll exile off the top, and then you can actually play those. So even though they're out of the game, you can still actually use them. So you'll play those, then you'll play these, which gets you access to more cards, and then hopefully off of those, you'll hit one of these so that you can get more mana, so that you can play more cards, so that you can play another one of these. And it's just an endless cycle. So the idea is so you hit him with a Grape Shot, which deals 1 damage for every time. So you need to build up 12. A spell is literally, if you play a card from your hand that's not like an actual land, it's technically considered a spell, right? So for instance, if I play him, even though he's a creature, he's still when he is initially cast out of the hand, it's considered a creature spell. So it ticks up your storm counter. So you go through this entire thing, right? And then, so that's basically like the entire deck is either give me mana, look through my deck, or reduce my cost, right? Or your actual lands that you need. So one of the biggest issues and the reason that the deck is like fucking like $900 or whatever, right, is because of these right here. So these are called shock lands. So normally you can only play one single land per turn, right? So this is a basic land. So I play this, and then I can't play another land for the turn, right? But in a deck that you want to be thinning out the deck so you're constantly hitting what you actually want, because any of these lands, right, if I have already played a land for turn, it is now a dead card, right? And even if I can play, because you can play it with these, right, with your thinners, right, you can still play a land. But the issue is it's a card that could have been another thinner or another mana piece, right? But these, right, they're super special because they allow you to play it. It's because it is itself a land, right? But then you can search and put it onto the battlefield. And so in Magic, it's literal. So since it doesn't say put it on the battlefield tapped, you put it on the battlefield where you can actually use it, right? So now you're getting rid of this card, and you're getting rid of the card out of your deck, and you're also shuffling after you search, right? So that's just, so for instance, there's another thing where you can take a look at the top of your the top deck of your top card of your library, right? So if you know, you're like, oh, that shit's fucking trash, right? Then it's another way to just like shuffle and get rid of it. But the biggest issue is each one of these is like 10 fucking bucks. So when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, this alone is $90, right? That's just the shitty part and why this deck is so expensive. So, like I said, these are basically, like, if you see this, you are not only getting a card that you need to use, right, which is your land, which is the base and the very first part of mana that you're beginning, you know that it's also another card, right? These are basic lands. They're fucking dog shit, but they're the Assassin's Creed ones, so I fucking love them. So these cards, so they come, so this is the one that allows you to take a look. So when it comes into play, right, you look at the top card, and then you can put it in your graveyard if you want to, right? So if you open one of the those fetch lands that I was telling you about, right, you can search for this because it comes into play tapped, and the earliest you could do your combo is turn 2, and that's if you have like a perfect hand. I haven't figured out what exactly a perfect hand is, but it really just comes down to what you actually hit, not like what you have in your hand. Because like you won't be able to use your turn 2. You would have 7, 8 cards, right? So those 8 cards aren't going to get you to 20 fucking spells and be able to win the game. So this is just so you can play this on turn 1, right? Fetch into it, and then you play it, and then you're able to look at the top card, and you're like, all right, going into turn 2, this is what I'm going to have. So if you see a land, you're like, oh, I don't need a fucking land because I have another one in hand. You can throw it in your grave. Or you could be like, all right, this is one of these that gives you actual mana, right? And you're like, oh, I need that. So you can just leave it right there. So then, yeah, like I said, this dude's your reducer. So he has a fucking... One of the big things is getting this guy to hit, right? So he's 2-sided. On his other side, right, he has an ability that allows you to exile 8 cards and then also play any instants and sorceries. And the biggest thing about it is you don't have to pay their mana cost, right? So you can build up to like so to do that on the same turn, you would have to cast. It costs 8. You have 2 when you start, so you need to cast 7 spells, and then you're able to trigger. So then, because he has an ability to flip, right? So once you cast your 7th spell, is when you would actually like want to flip, because it's you flip a coin. If you lose, you take a damage. If you win, you just like it says may, right? So you have the ability to do it. Like to choose if you don't want to, because he does have this static, everything costs 1 less. So it's just deciding on when, like on flip, right? You want it to be at like 7. Alright, we have a grape shop. Alright, so Wish is this weird. Oh yeah, we went over Ruby Medallion. We went over Rituals. We went over fucking Dig. Oh, I was looking for that. Whatever. Alright, so Wish is this weird thing, right? It says you can play a game that you own from outside of the game this turn. So in a casual game, that would mean you could literally just pick any fucking card, right, in your that you like own, right, like somewhere in your collection. But in competitive Magic, you actually have to, like, you have a 15 card sideboard, and so that's what this is linked to, right? So I can play this as a spell, and then it allows me to go through a 15 card sideboard, and I can play any of those, right? The only issue with Wish is you actually still have to do you have to pay for this card, and then you have to pay for the card that you want to, you're trying to cast. But when you cast them, they're still reduced by your reducers. So the biggest thing about it, right, is the reason that is a thing is because not only does it allow you to, your sideboard is just like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you're just trying to like tailor it. Well, you can, since that's in your main board, you can do that turn 1 or like game 1, right? Where you can be playing your sideboard cards because you're just like, oh, I actually didn't think this dude was going to do it. Or they actually put you into a position where you're like, oh shit, like one of the cards that I sideboard would be perfect for it. But in reality, one of the biggest things is if you need something to storm, right? There's like 2 storm cards in here. There's even a second grape shot. somewhere, right? So no matter what, so now there's basically one, I think there's either one or two, there's only one copy of Grape Shot in main board, but there is 3 copies of Wish. So I basically have 4 copies of Grape Shot in the deck, because as long as I hit one of them, because like even if you exile, you can just leave it in exile because you can play it until the next turn. But obviously storm count goes away. But what you can end up doing is, if that's like the very first card you exile, but you also exile a ritual, the ones that give you mana, you can just leave it there, because you can literally cast it at any time until your next turn. So you can just leave it. And you're like, all right, cool, I hit it. Or if you hit a Wish, right? Wish just, all it does is when it resolves, it gives you the ability at any point to then cast. So same thing, if you end up hitting it first, it allows you to just say, okay, cool, I cast it, I get my storm trigger, or you get your storm count to go up by 1, right? And then just whenever the time is right, you're good to go. So you can just grab a fucking Grape Shot from in here. And then, so this card is actually pretty cool, and it's fucking insane, right? So each instant and sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. So flashback is you can play it, right, out of your graveyard. And so normally there's like a cost that's associated with it, right? So it's you actually being deficient to play it out of your graveyard, because that's kind of busted, right? But this gives it to it, and it gives you the flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, right? So 1 cost spell or like a 2 cost spell, and since you cast them out of your graveyard, your reducers trigger as well, right? So your Wish, right, which is 1 red and 2 colorless. If I have Ruby Medallion and I have Raw, both those are the 2 different types of reducers, right? If I have both of them on the field, when I cast this and then want to cast this out of my graveyard, it'll be reduced to just 1 red mana, right? But yeah, so this is, but the other thing is this has what's called flashback, which is literally what this is, right? Which it's giving everybody flashback. So you're able to play it out of your graveyard. So remember how I said the surveil lands, you can take a look at them and be like, oh, I don't need this, right? And put it in your graveyard. If you see this on top, right, it is 1 extra to cast for its flashback cost. So playing it out of my graveyard versus playing it out of my hand or out of exile from one of these other cards. But it's basically a guarantee, right? So you don't have to worry about, oh, maybe I hit it, maybe I don't. Because your two extenders to push for an OTK are going to be either Pass in Flames or Rawl's Soup, or his ulti, which is the cast 8 for free, right? Because this, I can now cast everything in my grave. So every single card that gave me mana throughout the entire turn that I've been playing, I can then play again, right? So I added like 20 mana. I've cast like 10 cards, right? Use this, and I can now just do all of that again. But the only thing is it's then exiled. So it's like if I hit this one and then I hit this one, I'm kind of fucked. But there's a weird interaction. So basically it resolves on the field, right? So it says in your graveyard. So this doesn't gain flashback, right? Or another copy of, so if I cast this from my hand or from exile and this one is already in my graveyard, right? This will get flashback. But this one, right, goes into the grave after it's already resolved. So it wasn't in the grave, right? Basic TCG rulings. But what it allows you to do is, if you have a bunch of your dig spells, right, and a bunch of your rituals, you play all of them the first time, right? This is in the grave. You exile it for its flashback, right? Or, yeah, if you just have, if you cast this, right? Cool, boom. Now everything has flashback. So now you can play all those again. Now all of the ones that you've dug again, right? You're going through your deck. All of those now go to the grave. But since they weren't in the grave when this card resolved, they don't have flashback. So then you play another one, right? like out of what you fucking like what you got out, right? You play it out of your hand. All of the ones that you just did that second time now have flashback. So then you can play all of those out of there. So you're literally getting like, if you extend, you can hit 2 to 3 times. And then Raw's alt, like I said, it just allows you to play without paying the mana cost, which basically means you could, that one's really all based on luck, right? Because you could hit fucking 8 lands, right? Which is kind of good if you have other stuff that you can use. But if you don't, it kind of sucks. But yeah, you have the possibility of hitting 8, or you have the possibility of hitting like fucking 2. You never know. This one kind of more guarantees it. And like I said, you can, if you get it in the grave for whatever reason, right? So the max hand size in this game is 7. So for instance, if you come like fuck up, right, and you need to go for that turn 3 or turn 4 kill, you can pitch this for your, so you can, when you finish up the turn, right, you go to your, just like in Yu-Gi-Oh, you go to your discard step and nothing else can happen, right, no matter what. You pitch this, now it's in the grave. And so now, no matter what, even if you like, even if you don't hit it, you can just pay this. It's technically getting cast, so you can do your fucking reducers. So if you have just 2 of them out, it only costs you 3 to then be able to play everything. So if you if you're at like 4, you go down to 1, right? Every spell that's still in your graveyard, it costs 1. Like, this is the most expensive. This and Wish are like the only 2 cards that don't cost a singular red mana, just because of their generic cost. But if you get more reducers, right, you still can. And then lastly, so these are kind of, I wouldn't say they're tech cards. They're kind of more situational, right? So these 3 have a spell on one side, and then you can flip them over, and they're lands, right? So, see down there, it says it's a fucking land. So, for, like, if I was going to change anything, it would probably be these 3, right? Because they're very expensive. They are 2 pips of red mana by themselves. But the way that this game works with X spells is your X is, if you have like a reducer, right, that reduces by any sort of mana, it also counts for this X, right? So if I have 2 reducers on the field and I just paid the 2 red mana, it would still have X would have a value of 2. Or if I put 4, right, 2 for the actual required and then 2 into X with 2 reducers, I would have a value of X of 4, right? And this has like, this card is more for the grind game, right? Because it allows you to do damage to creatures and or planeswalkers, but by turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, they're not really having like this massive board of fucking creatures. But like I said, because you have your reducers, you can still get a value for X, right? So you just pay. So instead of just paying 1, you pay 2 red, and then you leave X as 0, and it still casts for your storm counter. This is with just creature removal, right? But again, it still counts for your storm. And then this black mana, which you're not really playing in the deck, but it's called Phyrexian mana, so it can be paid with black or 2 life. So this card, you could, if you have a reducer on the field, it will reduce it to just the 2 Phyrexian mana, and then you can pay it for 4. So for 4 life, I can get another instant. So what I do like to keep it, because, so like I said with Raw, you have to win the coin flip, and then you can choose. So if you end up getting to your 6 or 7 storm count, and it's with an instant or sorcery, right? Or your 6 or 7 instant or sorcery for the turn. If you get to that with Raw and you like fail that coin flip, I can just pay 4 life to try and flip again, right? And it's 50-50 chance, so it's like I should get it. And then you can also just like fucking kill something, right? And there's not a whole lot by turn 2, turn 3 that's gonna need the full 5/5. So again, it's another thing where it's like it's for the grind game, which I won't experience until I actually play against somebody in this, because this has been a lot of just shuffle and see if I can get the lines to work, because I'm trying to figure out what my fuck is that goddamn word? Optimal opening hand is, right? Because this is 60 card constructed. So what I'm thinking is, so you start with 7, right? And if you go first, you don't draw, just like Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And then if your opponent goes first, you draw a card, right? So for your first turn 2 of the actual game itself, you'll draw a card. So what I'm thinking for an initial opening 7 is 2 of everything. So I want 2 lands, preferably 2 fetches, 2 rituals, and 2 reducers, right? Or sorry, 1 reducer and a searcher, maybe 2. But basically the reason, so preferably not this, like, so this kind of sucks, right? Because I'm paying, so if I initially want to play this card, right, I pay 2 mana to only get 2 back. And both reducers cost 2 mana, so I kind of want to, so I'd be preferred to open one of these 2, right? Because these give me 3 mana. So what it allows you to do is you'll have 2 on turn 2, tap them, play this, go up to 3, spend 2 for your reducer, right? So your reducer hits the field, now it's reducing everything, and then everything else costs 1 and a red. So that 1 is now gone, it's just red. And since this is a red, you can play it. So if you have a second ritual, preferably, you can then go up more in mana and then bank that into more searches. And then hopefully the searches grab shit. But yeah, so I've hit, in just my general playtesting right now, I've been hitting more turn 3, turn 4 kills versus actual turn 2. So the very first time I shuffled and played the deck, I got a turn 2 kill. But I'm seeing more turn 3s and 4. I think the whole hype of this is the possibility of a turn 2. But if it was going to be a turn 2 kill or a turn 3 or 4 kill, right, it has to be with you going first. Because it allows you to have 2 mana while your opponent only has 1. And there's nothing really in the meta that allows for countering of your spells and abilities for just 1. Like, they need to have 2. So the longer it takes, the more likely they are to A, draw a counter, and B, actually be able to pay for it. But yeah, alright everybody. Hope you enjoyed my good old deck tech that somehow took 23 fucking minutes. I'm not even sure if this shit's gonna send on fucking Facebook. God damn it.